Game one of Suns Mavs is here. We did Suns questions on Sunday. We'll do Mavs questions now. What can Suns fans expect? How can the Mavs win this series? We'll break it all down on today's Locked On Suns, Locked On Mavs crossover.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is a Locked On Suns, Locked On Mavs crossover show, getting you ready for game one of the second round. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member and a contributor at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. I am joined by the Locked On Mavs folks. That is Nick Angstadt. That is Isaac Harris.
Good morning, Isaac.
I love it. This is part two of a crossover, getting you ready for the game. We are brought to you by BetOnline today. BetOnline has you covered with more props, odds, and lines than ever before all year long. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, guys. So you asked me questions on Sunday's show, part one here. Part two, I am going to ask you guys some questions. And I said in the first one that I don't think Suns fans are underestimating the Mavs, although some of them are delusional. I've heard there's Suns in four.
There's enough delusional
already.
Mavs fans too.
There's delusional all sorts of fans. But I think this is going to be a series. So I'm excited to get into it. But it's the same place we started in part one, frankly, in terms of matchups. And I think a lot of the first couple games of the series are a lot about matchups. So we saw the Pelicans in the first round. Herb Jones was their guy. And then it was like, what comes next? And we saw Brandon Ingram guarding Devin Booker. Then Devin Booker goes out, and then things get turned on their head. But if I just ask you guys, what was that?
Alvarado.
Oh, God. No. We don't actually.
Wait, do you not like this guy now?
No, not at all.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'm rooting for him in his career. He's a cool story, but no, I mean,
he's the JJ Barea now. Like, he's the new JJ
Yes.
Barea. Like every other team is gonna kind of hate him, and then
Chris Paul acting like he didn't know his name. Get out of here.
Chris Paul didn't get the ball across half court a couple times, so I think he was flustered, to be frankly with you. But no, let me just ask you this: like point blank, how do the Suns guard Chris Paul and Devin Booker? Just game one, opening tip, first offensive possession for the Suns. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. Dorian Finney-Smith, this season has kind of grew into just this perfect. I said if you listen to part one, if you haven't listened, go listen to part one from yesterday on both of our YouTube channels. But we talked about Dorian Finney-Smith has turned into this just ideal 3-and-D guy. Like he last series was it was incredible. Like everything you can ask for Dorian Finney-Smith in a series, he gave it to you last series. He shot 40% from three. He was the primary defender on Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, who shot like 20% from three last series, shot under 40% from the field last series. Dorian Finney-Smith also played 259 of the 288 possible minutes last series. So hopefully he's just kicked back resting before this Sun series, because he's probably going to get the Devin Booker assignment because he always guards the best, perimeter guy for the opposing team. But I think we could see him on Chris Paul too. Like that first matchup, they threw Maxey out there to have length on Chris Paul and to kind of disrupt, the point guard and all of that. But I think Dorian will start off on Booker, but it wouldn't shock me if he spent some time on Chris Paul.
And then I think Reggie Bullock starts on Chris Paul, right? That's sort of been the thing that like these two wings have defined the Mavericks in so many different ways. We talked about him in our, the series winning podcast we did right after the Mavs beat the Jazz and put David Locke and the Utah Jazz out of business for the rest of the season. But Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith have played so many minutes in that series. The Mavs cannot do any of the defensive schemes or even some of the offensive schemes because of how good those guys have been shooting the ball. They can't do any of the stuff that they try to do without those two guys specifically, and how many minutes those guys are able to play and stay up at a really, really good, like a high level. And so those two guys
Nick doesn't even think Reggie should play very much. Like,
I have to apologize that you felt that he should have played more.
For Suns fans and new Mavs fans, that's Jason Kidd telling me that when I asked him a question after like game 2 or 3, Reggie Bullock played like
It's pretty
17
early on, yeah.
Yeah, he played 17 minutes in a game, and I was just curious. I was asking him if there was anything like physically wrong with Reggie Bullock, and that's what he told me.
I have to apologize that you felt that he should have played more.
And I've never stopped playing it all year.
But in all honesty, I mean, that was the biggest signing for the Mavs, this past offseason, and looking for these 3-and-D guys to play, with Luka Doncic. And I mean, he had an incredible series too, alongside Dorian, 40% from 3 and playing amazing defense. And the only, if you want to say downside about it, is the Mavs have to put a lot of wear and tear on these guys. They have to play. I mean, they're both playing 44 to 46 minutes, the entire series, and they're about to do it again against Phoenix.
Because the other
Bridges was that guy in the first round for the Suns. I mean, I think he played 47 in the closeout game, similar in game 5, their 2 wins to close it out. So this is going to be a wing heavy series. This is going to be a versatile switching series. So some of that matchup stuff will change, obviously, but I'm curious because we talked about this in part 1 too, but the last time these teams played was pre-trade deadline. So Kristaps Porzingis played a massive role in that game. The Suns had to put a big body on him. That's just what you do, even though he wasn't very effective in that game. So things are different now. Spencer Dinwiddie's here. Reggie Bullock's playing way more. How have you guys seen like the way that, as you've seen maybe like a repeat game or the Jazz series in particular, what's different about how teams are approaching the Mavericks now that they look so different? Because that's going to be one of the big questions from the jump in game 1.
Well, you just look at how the Mavericks have approached games. Like they were playing these as long as Porzingis was here and Luka and Porzingis were playing, they played just these 2 different styles all the time, right? They would play this, one style when Porzingis was on the floor and another style when he wasn't. And then finally, when Porzingis was traded, the Mavs were able to just say, "Hey, we're gonna play this one style this whole time." I mean, a little bit different with Luka because of what Luka allows you to do, but they spread the floor. They usually have a lot of shooters unless Dwight Powell or another like rim roller is on the floor. They run a ton of pick and rolls. They just run it over and over and over again. And Luka can kick out to shooters. Brunson can kick out to shooters. You have Brunson doing stuff in the mid-range, in the post, and getting stuff done there. And so the Mavs have been able to, and then adding Spencer Dinwiddie added a third ball handler the Mavs needed so badly. And then Jalen Brunson stepping up and becoming honestly, like an all-star level player in the playoffs. Good Lord, he's been one of the, 10 best players in the playoffs. It's wild. We did not even expect that. As Mavs fans are people that have covered all of Brunson's career in the NBA. So his step up and the addition of Dinwiddie has allowed them to add these different attackers and ball handlers. And so you've seen, Luka get some more post-ups. You've seen Luka get some more opportunities where he wouldn't before because Porzingis was kind of occupying that space, or they had to have, Porzingis and Dwight Powell out there, which just kind of mucked up a lot of different things.
I'm curious too on JaVale McGee's minutes in the series that we've seen, ever since the trade happened and Dallas kind of embraced this small ballish, if we just want to say that, there's no more KP down low. The center by platoon with Dwight Powell's a rim roller, Maxey can stretch, Dorian as this small ball 5 with Bertans out there with him. But we seen a team early, a few months ago, they went zone on Dallas and it kind of really threw them off. And it's like, whoa, they're trying to adjust because Dallas loves to just drive, kick, move the ball, try to get the open 3. And then there was this sliver of a moment in this Utah series in which Rudy Gobert goes to the bench, Whiteside stays on the bench, and they ran Eric Paschall out as their 5. And it threw Dallas off too. And then we went into the next game saying, how much are they going to lean into this? How much is Quinn Snyder going to do this? Because it obviously worked for a little bit with, against Dallas there with the small ball lineup. And they just never did. They hardly ever went back to it. So I think that's my question is, if JaVale McGee is like a Hassan Whiteside type of, I think he's better than Whiteside, but is there a moment if Dallas's small ball is excelling against Phoenix, especially when DeAndre Ayton's off the floor, do they lean into that, what you referenced on part 1, the all defensive, all world Torrey Craig at the small ball 5 type of thing? Do they go small in the second unit and just JaVale McGee's kind of like to the wayside? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really good question. I kind of want to talk about the benches a little bit more. So we'll do that after a quick break. First, though, guys, I'm actually in save mode with my Athletic Greens, my AG1. I got to the end and I'm like, I'm not going to use the last scoop. So I've been going every other day, but I've also been feeling it. I at least, you guys on AG1 addicts at this point? You guys been pumping it in?
Oh, I'm feeling it. It's making me feel younger. It's making me feel more energetic. My gut health is great. All that stuff. Like all the boxes have been checked.
The gut health isn't a good thing to always broadcast, but when it feels that much better, you got to talk about it. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food-sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. Again, supports that gut health, that nervous system, immune system, energy, everything. Makes you feel a little younger if you are if you ever feel old. I don't really struggle with that.
Not that Brendon and I need to look any younger.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Nick and I Wait, maybe need something that makes us look older.
Do I not look younger?
You got a beard.
You got the beard. Exactly.
Oh, okay. I'm like,
I did shave for this. Normally it's a little longer.
But Brendon and I look like we're 15.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced problems with that gut health, ended up in a complicated supplement routine, and it cost him $100 per day to recover. What he did is create a product that saved anybody from that experience. So Athletic Greens and their AG1 can do the same for you. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for this pill and that pill, that supplement and this supplement. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutrition insurance. All right, Isaac, you were talking about the bench a little bit in the center spot specifically. I think to answer your question a little bit, I don't know if this is a JaVale McGee series. The last series actually for the Suns ended up not being a JaVale McGee series by the end. I do think there's a certain level of worry that the playoffs aren't necessarily the best for JaVale McGee, period. If you remember back to some of those Lakers and Warriors series when he was winning titles, he was getting DNPs by the end. This is a pattern for him. I think Bismack Biyombo and Torrey Craig will be the backup big men when things really get tight late in games, late in the series. I just think that the Mavs are going to bring that out of them, and I do though think McGee can make it work when Powell's out there. So I guess that's a question for you guys. You said in part one, you think Powell might play a little more in this series. What do you think his role will be?
Yeah, no, I think that the Mavs are going to be able to run pick and roll a little bit more on them. I think that Rudy Gobert is a better defender than DeAndre Ayton, and I don't think that that's a crazy opinion. And so I think that the Mavs will be able to run that a little bit more. The Mavs also didn't have Luka in the first 3 games of the Jazz series. And so without Luka, like Dwight Powell was just rendered sort of like a hustle guy. You need a little bit more than a hustle guy in the playoffs. And so I think that he'll play a little bit more. He also can try to defend DeAndre Ayton a little bit more, and the Mavs don't lose a ton on the offensive end because Luka is still there and Luka is in. So I think Dwight will play a little bit more in the series, but I also think they're just gonna go back. It's just gonna come down to these smaller ball units. It's gonna come down to, can DeAndre Ayton defend in space? It's gonna depend on, the Suns don't want to allow corner threes. Can the Mavs hit the corner threes that they're gonna get, because they are gonna get them, because they're going to get penetration. There's just going to be all kinds of things, and it's just going to come down to those small ball units again, because that's just the best lineups the Mavericks have, and they're going to try and force that on the Suns.
I'm so curious about the Dwight Powell minutes, because when you start looking at some of the numbers into you guys defending DeAndre Ayton, defending in the pick and roll, like you look in the regular season, they were 25th in the league. The Suns were, and they allowed 1.18 points per possession to the roll man, according to Synergy. And even, it's kind of the opposite in that New Orleans series, because I think it's CJ McCollum. I was trying to look at a lot of the possessions. It was the opposite in the playoffs in that first round series for them. To the pick and roll ball handler, they're averaging an even 1.0 points per possession, which, if you're familiar with Synergy rankings, is a poor rating as far as defending, the ball handler in that. So that tells me that that Phoenix does struggle a little bit in defending, or a lot, however you want to say it, the pick and roll. And if there's a duo to kind of take advantage of that, it's Luka Doncic and Dwight Powell. So the only thing is that this is where the debate comes in. Dwight doesn't shoot threes. Maxey does. But Dwight's a great rim roller, Maxey isn't. So how will Dallas kind of balance that? I think Dwight plays more in this series, especially against maybe a DeAndre Ayton. But if they want to truly space the floor, then Maxey's out there shooting the threes.
Yeah, last series, Powell was just about 18 minutes per game. Maxey was 23, over 23. I think I agree with you. I mean, maybe Powell plays a bit more, maybe early in the series, but I think Kleba at the 5 is going to be their best look. I mean, it's what's given the Suns most trouble. On the note of minutes, though, I'm curious. I mean, I think some of it's out of whack because Luka came in and then the rotation changes a little bit, but do you think that what we saw at the end of the first round from Dallas's standpoint is sort of going to be the rotation? Like, do you think really those guys are going to be playing 35, 38 plus minutes every night from here on out in the playoffs, however long Mavs are in it?
Yep. 100%.
They just don't have other guys?
Yeah, unless you want to see Trey Burke every night, which I think you guys would. But
and Josh Green is the other one too.
Josh Green's just such an interesting situation for him as a first round pick a few years ago. Now he's here, and it's like he had one good game against Utah, and it's like, all right, he can play, and then he really didn't play at all. He played like 2 minutes in that Game 6 game. They basically played 7-man rotation in that closeout game in Game 6. So, I mean, especially for Reggie and Dorian, they're going to play over 40 every single game. And that's where it's like when you look at expendable guys for Dallas, it's almost like you almost put Dorian at the top of that list more than like a Jalen Brunson, that they just can't have a Dorian Finney-Smith get hurt at all.
One last thing on the rotation stuff in minutes. Do you think Luka, we could just have the injury conversation. I mean, I think Book is going to take a bit. I mean, I think actually one of the silver linings and what made me understand him coming back more is if you get it over in 6, you get more time to rest. Whereas if they had gone to 7, you only have 2 days. And then, Luka's 3 games in now. How much do you guys expect Luka's injury to continue to affect him? How did it affect him once he got back on the court? What should we expect there?
It's going to affect him the most on the defensive end. The Jazz tried to attack Luka a lot. They tried to throw Donovan Mitchell at him a lot, where you just try to see if he could run by him really quick. And it worked a decent amount in that Jazz series, why a lot of the games were close. But it's going to affect him there. The Mavs try to leave Luka out there. They've left Luka out there in like defensive purposes. Like when they're doing offense-defense subs, they'll leave Luka out there. And it's just kind of wild to see sometimes because Luka has stepped up defensively this year. This has been the best defensive year of his career so far. He's been pretty good defensively. Don't let David Locke try to bog you down with any numbers. He just came on our pod and was just like slamming him all over the place. But he's been pretty good this year. But with this injury, with this calf strain that Luka, suffered in the very final game of the season in a quarter that really didn't matter, he's coming back from. First game, he looked rusty. The last 2 games, I thought he looked back like Luka again. Still getting attacked defensively, but now he's had a couple extra days as well. The Mavs 1-6, and so they got extra days to rest as well. I'm sure he's still doing treatment, and so I'm not as worried about Luka in that scenario. And I'm not sure that even like Booker and Chris Paul are going to attack the way that Devin Booker would, or that Donovan Mitchell did. Mitchell just tried to like speed right past him, and I don't think Chris Paul and Devin Booker really do that in their game. And so I think Luka may be able to hold up all right against those 2 guys compared to the way that the Jazz tried to attack him in the last series.
Yeah, and where he struggles a lot defensively, offense, I'm not worried about it. As far as like he's not limping anything either. Like he's moving out there and he's playing. It's
he's doing both of those things.
Well, as far as like he's playing, like
moving,
there's no like you can't visibly see a difference in him. Like,
let me actually ask you though, not to interrupt, but Luka, so his free throws were, I mean, some of it's fluky. He only played 3 minutes, but he was only like 6 point something free throws per game. And I looked actually, his post-up frequency against the Jazz in the first round was only 3.5%. It was like almost 10 in the regular season. So I'm not saying that's all the injury, but what do you make of that stuff?
Well, they just really like getting the mismatch with Rudy on the perimeter. One, they like the mismatch, that they trust it in the fact that Luka can take advantage of the Rudy mismatch. But also, when you get Rudy out on the perimeter, it just pulls him away from the basket. There are a couple of plays they just swing it over to the other guy, and the other guy just blows past the perimeter defender because they're basically traffic cones in Utah. So, and then they can just get to the rim, and Rudy's not at the rim. So I think it's more of that than it is health. But it's what I was saying a while ago is like him closing out on threes. That's where he's having a lot of issue right now of just coming, trekking down the floor and just like, oh, where's my guy? And they're switching. And then he's just not, and Jazz just missed their threes. Now, you guys don't shoot a ton of threes. I think you're like, 25th, 26 in the league in 3-point attempts per game. But when you do shoot threes, you actually hit them. You're like top 10 percentage wise. So it's going to be these threes, the Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder. I feel like Jay Crowder is going to attempt like 8 or 9 threes a game in this series because he's just going to get open threes.
Yeah.
I freaking love Cam Johnson. He's like he's one of my favorite players.
He's a steal in the draft.
He's a steal. Puff, his little brother plays, still plays for UNC. But anyway, that's where Luka's struggling right now, is closing out on some of these threes.
Yeah, the level of like sophistication we're going to see in the pick and roll stuff is probably the most exciting part of this whole thing to me. I know you mentioned the just spamming the Spain pick and roll in part one, Isaac, and like we're going to see a lot of that, but there was so much cool stuff going on both sides, even in that last game that they played in the regular season, and they still had some fluff in the rotation out there, like KP played, Biombo played, McGee played.
He said fluff in the rotation. KP played.
Well, I mean, look, I guess I see eye to eye with the Mavs front office, but
yes,
as an example, like if Luka got a switch, and this is on offense, but if Luka got a switch, Booker or somebody else, they were leaving Finney-Smith or Josh Green or whatever mid-drive on Luka, and somebody else would pick him up, and then Booker would like bail back out to the perimeter. Like these teams are so smart. So I do think if Booker or Luka are a little bit hampered, and you do see it on defense, or if they aggravate it and it gets worse, like just those little bits do count. But I want to talk about pace too, because I think both of these teams like to play slow, but they're kind of better sometimes when they do play fast. So we'll get there. We'll get to that in just a second. First, guys, today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever, the best, my favorite. I'm assuming your guys' favorite. I honestly notice it now when I do not have a Built Bar, and it throws me off. It throws my whole day off. What's your guys' favorite flavor, Isaac?
Coconut brownie chunk all day, every day.
It's a good one. I had a brownie batter puff today, and it was my last one. They don't even sell them anymore. You have to check the website every day because the good flavors go so quickly.
I had somebody comment in the YouTube video the other day. They were like, just so you know, the flavor that you said is the best, they don't sell that anymore. And I was like, I'm sorry you're missing out, but they did sell it, and it's delicious. It's a bummer, but you got to go check them out because they'll bring something back that you thought you were missing out on, and now it's here. They just launched granola bars. You guys get fancy with your favorite. Mine is just the old-fashioned double chocolate. None of the bars are ever going to crack 150, 200 calories, no more than 5 grams of sugar, and packed with 15 to 20 grams of protein. That's the biggest thing. You look at a lot of protein bars, quote unquote protein bars at the grocery store or whatever, and they're 5, 8 grams of protein. It's like you're just eating a big sugar pop at that point. It's not doing much for you. Built Bar gets that delicious flavor in there, and they make it healthy. They get it done every single time. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Isaac, I saw your eyebrows raised when I said that the Suns like to play slow. That's
because
true.
I've been looking at all these pace numbers, and I'm like, how are they top 10 in pace? And now you're about to blow my mind.
Well, so here's the deal. So I usually look at pace in seconds per possession instead of possessions per game because your guys' old friend Haralabob says to do it that way. But also, I think it's smarter.
Haralabob also said to draft Josh Green instead of Desmond Bain.
And he's still defending that one if you hear him on podcasts. But Dallas was bottom. I mean, any way you slice it, but they were actually considerably below the 29th team in seconds per possession at 15 and a half. And the Suns were 6th. So I should preface what I'm saying by acknowledging the Suns have played much quicker this year than they did last year. That was a real flaw for them last year, that they didn't have stuff built in to build their pace up. It was just Chris Paul's tempo was it. And they got bitten by that in the playoffs and in the postseason and in the finals. So they built some stuff in. You'll see different guys pick the ball up and take it past half court. You'll see drag screens like at half court by Ayton or Crowder or somebody just to get the possession going. And then they play with really good tempo in the half court too. Even if the possession takes long, they're going to move the ball. They're going to get downhill and kick and do their thing. The Mavs do that second part, especially lately, but not so much that first part. However, when I looked at that January 20th game, it felt like the Mavs were actually playing quick, and the Sun they caught the Suns sleeping a little bit. They were able to get some mismatches. They were able to get some trail threes over guys' heads that were too small and things like that. Do you think that it's just too ingrained in how the Mavs want to play, or do you think that they could switch it into another gear if they realize it's an attack point?
Oh yeah, you were talking about all that stuff that the Suns try to do to get fast pace, and I was like, when's the last time the Mavs ran anything like that? They just don't run any of that stuff at all. But what we did see them do in the Jazz series, which I think they're going to try to do in this series a little bit, is push the pace to get the matchup that they want, right? Because the whole thing for the Mavericks, the reason why they play slow is because they're trying to hunt matchups. They're trying to hunt a mismatch. They're trying to get Brunson with a guard that thinks that they're strong enough to guard him, and then they're really not. And then he can just push him around and get his spot. They're trying to get Luka on a center that's just a little bit too slow, that doesn't realize he's a little bit too slow. Like, they're trying to get all these different matchups. And so what the Mavs have tried to do, at least in the Jazz series, is after a rebound push, after a turnover push, and this is just something we haven't seen them do very much at all. And so then maybe they'll try to push the pace up, but if the pace does go real slow, I think that favors the Mavs because they've been playing that way all year.
Yeah, Dallas loves to go slow, and they it's because they trust their sets too. Like I was talking about that Spain pick and roll thing.
You only run like two.
Well, because nobody has an answer for it. Like Bobby Crowell at Mavs.com does a great breakdown of this whole set on the film room on the Mavs YouTube channel. And he points out, it's like against Houston earlier this year, now we get the Rockets suck. But they started off the game running the same exact set, same play 5 times in a row, scored 5 times in a row. And it's like, because you have these different actions that you run it so high near half court, Dwight comes up, you bring this other guy up to set a back screen on Dwight's man. Well, then a lot of times it's Reggie Bullock. Well, then he slips out and is at the top of the key. So now you're leaving it to Luka to either 1, shoot a layup, 2, hit Dwight Powell for a lob, or throw it backwards to Reggie Bullock for a 3, hit a guy. And it's like so many teams struggle so much with that. A lot of it's because of the brilliance of Luka Doncic, but if you have a set and you have an action like that is near impossible to guard, then you go slow. And it's like, all right, well, we'll run our bread and butter. And they're going to run it about 14,000 times this series.
Well, a lot of that, and that is actually to my point of the Suns playing slow. Like, if you allow them to do that stuff, they're going to make you pay too. Like, Suns fans listening to you are probably thinking, hey, that sounds exactly like Chris Paul. He's not even hiding it. Like, you watch him late in games or in a certain spot, if he feels like he has blood in the water that he's smelling, he'll just hold up the same signal over and over and over and stop it. If you don't, we'll do it again the next time. So I kind of want, that's that, because I want to geek out about it. I want to maybe close with the pick and roll stuff, because to me, I was watching and Nekias Duncan did the breakdown that I went viral, and I'm sure you guys saw that, of just how the Jazz just falling asleep. He tweeted it. It was going around, just stuff where it's like the Mavs are just getting a 3 by passing it one time to somebody, because the Jazz just don't even know what their scheme is. And it's not going to be that easy against the Suns. But I also think, the Jazz or the Mavs have the personnel to make it harder on the Suns. So pick and roll wise, Nick, Isaac, what do you feel like the Mavs will want to attack about the Suns? Like you said, Isaac, that Ayton is not a great pick and roll defender. I feel like you just have Rudy Gobert highlights in your head, because I think he is a pretty good pick and roll defender.
I can't wait to tweet
I also
you.
think there's things to expose about the Suns defense. So what do you feel like the Mavs will want to pick at the most?
Well, and when we talk about a good pick and roll defender, it's like against Luka Doncic, right? Like that's the frame of mind that we have in that. And so it's like really nobody's really good pick and roll defender if you think about it that way, because Luka's just so good at attacking pick and rolls. And so, yeah, I think they're going to try to get a Luka Ayton, ISO a ton. I think they're going to try to do that a lot and just see how well Ayton holds up and see if Luka can get past him, or if he can, body him and get a shot around the rim. Like, I think they're going to try that because they had so much faith in it in the series before against Gobert. And then, if the Suns do try to send somebody, then all of a sudden it's an open three. Then they just trust the open threes to hopefully go down. But to your point, it's not going to be that easy. The Suns rotate a lot better than the Jazz do, and Ayton moves his feet obviously a lot better than Gobert does. So that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch.
Rudy defends pretty well on the perimeter too, but
he does.
Brendon, I'm just trying to find cracks in the armor, okay? Because y'all are so freaking good. I'm trying to find.
Look, the ability for the Suns to defend the pick and roll with two guys is something that is a luxury. I mean, I did a whole episode when the team, I think it might have been that January 20th game, where I was like, we all as Suns, fans, followers, Valley residents like to say Bridges is this lockdown guy. It's only him. And I think you realize when you see Bridges play without Ayton that it's both of them. And so those guys being at their best and then the Suns being able to rotate on the back of that, I tweeted a picture of Luka taking a pick and roll, like a floater turnaround jumper type thing, and there's 4 Suns in the paint, but nobody seems open at the same time. And the Suns are able to do that because they have such length and IQ, and they're zoning up on the backside and all those things that you're supposed to do when you're defending a pick and roll. I also worry the most on the Suns end about fouls, because that was a huge problem, as you guys pointed to in part 1 of this crossover. The Suns got into foul trouble a lot, especially Jay Crowder in round 1, and that was a Pelicans team. They were getting some calls that maybe were a little bit questionable, but that's not a team that has the level of creators that Luka is and everything else. So I do worry about that a little bit. Are there other guys on the Mavs that can draw fouls like that, or is it really just Luka that people need to worry about?
Oh, Dinwiddie's going to draw a bunch of fouls, I think.
Yeah.
This last series was not a Dinwiddie series at all because of Gobert, basically. And I think this will be a series where Dinwiddie, he's become, I like the 30 Rock phrase. He's the third heat. Like, he's the third heat for the Mavs. We have Luka that can do anything. Brunson's the post up, can get a bunch of mid-range shots. He has that herky jerky game. And then Dinwiddie is just like the straight line drive to the rim kind of guy. And so if we see any time where he's getting to the basket a lot, then he's going to be drawing some fouls. Now he's got to make his free throws, because that was a huge thing, and he admitted that in the first series. But
yeah, we haven't really got to talk about Dinwiddie much, but that we talk about going small after the trade, but the biggest part of that trade is having the third creator, having the third ball handler, and Dallas really leaned into that game 6 of throwing out that lineup of not just small ball, but having all 3 of those guys on the floor at the same time that can put the ball on the floor, create something, get to the basket type thing. I'm curious of besides trying to put DeAndre Ayton in a pick and roll, all that stuff, how much will Dallas try to hunt Chris Paul on the switch with Luka? And will we see more post-up possessions? Will we see Luka? Luka last year had some good post-up numbers. Will we see that increase this series of, hey, listen, I was watching some of that January 20th game earlier and just seeing what we could learn from it a little bit. And there were a few times just early in that game that Chris Paul got switched off on Luka, and Luka just immediately back to the basket, backed him down. So I wonder if that's something they'll actually go after.
Or Booker with the injury. Like, what do you think about the Mavs hunting either of those guys?
Yeah, it's probably going to happen. That's why, back full circle a little bit, I don't like the idea of Booker starting on Brunson. I mean, I don't think you do everything you can to get out of that, but it's back to some of that switching stuff too, that re-switching or scram switching to just bail out Paul and Booker if it's possible at all. A couple other things on the Suns end with the pick and roll stuff, though, is I think that the Suns will have an advantage in this series, and even maybe a way that the Mavs or that the Jazz didn't.
Well, you think they'll have an advantage?
Well, their wings are bigger in some cases than, like, I saw there was a couple possessions where Bridges had an open shot and it was like Brunson closing out on him, or if it's Dinwiddie closing out on him, or even, in some cases like Cam Johnson against Reggie Bullock or Mikal Bridges on Reggie Bullock. It's not quite the same there, but the Suns have these wings that are going to mostly be bigger and longer than everybody outside of Finney-Smith. So I think that could be an advantage. I really think this is going to be a Cam Johnson series. So I'm sorry if that makes you like him less at the end of it, Isaac. But
no, I love him.
I don't know if it's going to be a Jay series. If Jay Crowder can't guard Luka and he still is cold from 3, I think we finally do see a ton of Cam Johnson. So I just think the series is going to be decided in the pick and roll is who can get the best shots, who can defend it the best on the other side. It's going to be high scoring to me, and that's going to be the end of it. I have one last question for you guys. Suns
Please.
fans were asking me this. I think they tweeted it at one of you. Maybe.
The Suns gonna win in 4.
Yeah. How many games are the Suns going to win in? No.
Yeah.
What? So at the end of this round 1, it was Jose Alvarado, who we talked about, that Suns fans hated. Who's the guy on the Mavs that Suns fans are going to come away hating by the end of this series? That was somebody asked me that on Twitter.
Is Luka too much of a cop out?
Yeah,
it is, but he's the guy. Like, it's just everything flows through Luka, and
those damn smiles.
Oh, it's that smile, that damn
Faces.
smile. He gets under the skin of any player. Like, if anybody is like has a crack in their armor or something like that, or just shows that they're frustrated or something, he'll just like keep going at him, keep poking the bear. Like, there's a lot, like, you hear about the stories about Larry Bird. I've been watching that Winning Time, show where Larry Bird would be like, "Hey, I'm about to go do this to you right here. I'm gonna step back in your face, and I'm gonna," like, he has done that to players in the NBA where he just like looks and tries to pull the same thing off play after play. The play against Rudy Gobert where he like posts him up. Like, who posts up Rudy Gobert? But he posts up Rudy Gobert. He does the fake 3 times above his head and then hits the layup, gets the foul, and he just like he runs and yells to the bench, the Jazz bench. He can't guard me. About Rudy Gobert, 3-time defensive player of the year, like huge 7-foot human. It's gonna be Luka, and if it's not Isaac, it's maybe Dorian, because Dorian loves talking to the benches too.
But people respect the heck out of Dorian, and
He's so likable.
we just don't have one of those dudes. The only other guy, Luka's the answer. Luka's the clear answer of that. But the only other guy would be Maxey, just because Maxey just doesn't give a crap. He'll foul somebody hard. He'll go up for any block at the rim. I think we could see a Maxey, Jay Crowder, nose to nose type, situation at some point. I could see that.
I think if I was in the NBA, Maxey would frustrate me because he would surprise me. I mean, at this point, he's been in the league long enough, but for fans too, it's like, he can do that? What just happened? Why did he catch a lob dunk? Like,
one of my favorite things is when perimeter guys for opposing teams or smaller guards, they'll get switched off with him, defending him, or Maxey's defending them, and they think it's a mismatch, and they try to get past him, and he blocks them. I'm like, this is not a mismatch. But my last question for you, one more thing. What's the odds that this is maybe a way that Dallas could win this series, but what's the odds Jalen Brunson outplays Chris Paul in this series?
Oh, like 10%, 5%.
Okay. I just wanted.
I mean, it's true. So the one big thing about last series was that
he might outscore him. He might outproduce him, but outplay him, I don't see.
Is that Brunson thoroughly outplayed Donovan Mitchell in the last series, and so you see it like that, and then you're like, okay, well, can he do it the same way? But Chris Paul, he doesn't outplay you by scoring 45 or even 35, right? Like, he just he just like dices you up, and Brunson doesn't do that.
He gets that senior citizen discount. So I gotta get my shots off now before
we gotta get some kind of shots off.
That's how it has to go. All right, guys, game 1 should be awesome. I'm excited. I will be there. Hopefully I don't crash my car on the way there this time. Knock on wood.
Oh, wait, what happened?
It should be an awesome series. We'll get into that offline. I don't want to sour anybody's mood. It's round 2 time, 7:00 local tip. We might cross over again, but either way, we will be here with you every single day. Thanks for making Locked On Suns and Locked On Mavs your first listen. Now go make Locked On NBA your second listen to catch up on everything that goes on in the NBA on Monday night.
Good plug. Peace out, Brendon.
Boom.